afternoon, everybody. How are you today for a high heat? Nice to have with us on the 10th day of January, a Tuesday, as we move it along here on the great MLB Network. As we chat, Alana here a little bit later on. The quiet man, not John Wayne. Will Folger, of course, is overseeing Micah, so we'll keep an eye on that as the afternoon progresses. It's nice to have you with us here. And again, Brian Kenny will make a case for every utility player in the history of Major League Baseball, going back to Robert Marinville, although he wasn't a utility player, for the Hall of Fame. That will be a little bit later on. Okay, we got a developing story here that sounds like Carlos Correa is on his way back to Minnesota. The Mets were not going to go to that length of whatever it may have been, 12 years, $320 million or so. They basically offered him half that. 6 years, about 160, maybe a touch below, as our buddy Heyman said. And, they were not going to be on the hook for a contract at the tail end where he may not be physically able to perform. And as a result, the Correa camp bows out and makes a deal with Minnesota. And with Minnesota, he gets 8 years. I'm sorry, he gets 8 years and about a $210. Well, he gets 6 years at Minnesota, but he gets more money. So he only gets to 6 years anyway. He gets more money from Minnesota. But the problem with Correa is you could not go from 315 to 160 with the Mets in the same negotiating wheel and spin it like you made a good deal. That's too much of a hit. So he had to leave. Once the Mets were not going to guarantee the last 6 years of that contract, I'm going to go way below the $200 million figure. Correa can't stay because he looks bad. He can't do it. And even though from a standpoint of performance, team, competitiveness, his buddy Lindor, he's much better off in New York. He's a great big game player. We have discussed that. The Mets have a much better chance to play in a lot of big games than Minnesota does. Minnesota is not a championship-worthy team on any shape, way, or form. They are a divisional-worthy team, but they're not winning the title with that staff and everything else. They just don't have the wherewithal. They're not, barring a miracle and things breaking right, sort of a shot in the dark thing, they're not winning a world championship. And the Yankees and the Houston and, teams like that can, and the Mets are one of those teams. But Correa says, hold on now, the whole world thinks that I jumped in the agent's arm to go to the Mets. They offered me 12-year guaranteed. The owner, 9 o'clock in the morning drinking martinis in Hawaii, basically is, we needed one more bat. We need one more guy. Here's our guy. They look at the physical. They don't like what they see. Owner does a good job and say, hold on now. He's not worth $17 billion by making bad moves. I'm not going to be on the hook for this if this doesn't work out in 6 years where I'm paying him $150 million. I'm not doing it. And, the Boris camp with Correa says, all right, well, this is what I want. I'll go somewhere else. Boris knows in the long run he's going to need Cohen down the road because, he's got a lot of very expensive and great players as his clients, and he doesn't need a bad relationship with the Mets owner who's got an unbelievably large payroll, so he's not going to make a big stink. He's a brilliant man. He's not going to make a big stink, and he says, all right, I'll lose this one, and I'll go back to Minnesota. So in a lot of ways, this vindicates San Francisco, who really should never have been in the Correa market to begin with because they are not a ready-now team, and he is much better to be on a ball club where he's got a lot of great players around him, and he is not the great player because he's not going to sell tickets under any circumstances, and he's not going to lead your ball club a la Judge, where the Giants are in the mix. He's not going to lead your team. He's not that. Come on. So the Giants, who bailed on it, went in a different direction, pivoted to Conforto and other people, and the Mets jumped in. He wanted to be in New York. He would have switched positions, and the owner, who is, again, he's not stupid, the owner said, hold on now. I got a hell of a team as it is. I got a $350 million payroll as it is. I want the player, don't get me wrong, but, I'm not paying him $315 million, all guaranteed for 12 years, and I find out in 5 years he can't move because he's got plates in his ankle or thereabouts. And so I'm not doing this. So let's change it. I'll give him vested interests. I'll give him options, but I'm not giving him a guaranteed contract. And that makes Correa look bad when the whole world thinks it's $315 and all of a sudden he signs for $160. He can't do that. You cannot do that under any circumstances because everybody knows that you bailed to go to the Mets. That's not the way he operates. So he runs back to Minnesota where the questions will not be as firm about re-signing with the Twins. Now, listen, when he goes have his press conference in Minnesota, that's going to be tricky because he can't sit there and tell us, well, I'm glad to be home. This is my first choice. It wasn't his first choice. He had nowhere else to go. He wanted a fortune, thought he had it, then he didn't get it. Mets bail out. He wanted there in a worse way. Worst way. He wanted to play for the Mets, even by opting to move to third base. That doesn't work out, and he fell back in the lap of Minnesota, who, you give the Twins credit, they're trying to win. They offered $285, and they get him for $200. I mean, geez, the Twins, my gosh, that's as good as it gets. They saved $85 million on a deal. So no matter how they try to spin it, and listen, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm just trying to be true, be honest with you. Basically tell you exactly what's going on. In order for them, don't go to Minnesota next week and tell me this is the place I always wanted to be. This is a great. No, it's not. You wanted $300 million and you got $200 million. It's not. Be honest. You know what? Teams had questions with the medicals. Twins had the player last year. They did not. We loved it here in Minnesota anyway, but we got better deals somewhere else. We're back in Minnesota. We'll make the best of it. That's the way you handle it. Not, well, this is my dream to remain with the Twins, because it wasn't. And as far as the Mets are concerned, again, I know a lot of Met fans, and I know a lot of people think this is wrong. They're not talking to the same Met fans who sit in the upper deck that I do. I know a lot of Met fans who did not want Correa on their team. It kind of eliminates the charm. He's got a little Houston tinge. They were fine last year. I know Escobar wasn't great, but they thought last year they won 101 games. Yes, they need another offensive bat, but going out there and have a payroll over $400 million eliminates what the Mets historically have been about. Sort of the fun team, the blue-collar team, Corona, Queens. And I know a lot of Met fans don't want to be the Yankees. That's the fans that I talk to. Over the top with the Correa signing. So I know a lot of Met fans are not going to have a problem that he departs. So, I mean, I'm sure there's some who think it's bad, but the one thing about this, nobody's going to sit there who thinks this was a is down on a disappointed. Nobody's going to blame the owner, because this is not about money like the old regime. This is not about them spending a couple nickels. He was going to spend a fortune. He don't care. He wants to win. This is about him making a business decision. Well, hold on now. Where is my guarantee in years 7 through 12? I'm on the hook here for $180 million or something along $160 million, and I have nothing on their end? That's not fair. I'm not doing it. And I think most Met fans will understand that. And I think there's another portion of Met fans who are happy he's not a Met. Because you want to win, you don't want to have to be sort of a mercenary team. And the Mets have a lot of mercenary aspects to their team anyway. Scherzer, Verlander. They got a lot of the Lindor. He didn't want to come to the Mets. They gave him $341. So there's a lot of that anyway with the team. I don't think the Mets want, and I think a lot of Met fans don't like that. And Correa was going to be one of those types. So from that standpoint, I don't think the Met fans are going to be that upset that he leaves. That's my take. The guys that I speak to will, again, sit in the upper deck, not behind first base. Upper deck. Upper deck. Now, again, I'll be fascinated with that Correa press conference in Minnesota, because that's a tricky press conference. You thought you had a $320 million deal with the Giants. You thought you had a $320 million deal with the Mets. And now you have a $200 million deal with the Twins. That is where we begin. Busy program. Lots going on here today. We'll be all over this. Alana's got to have here. We got to hear from Alana, her 2 cents. And she says hello, Miss Rizzo. How are you today?
Good afternoon. A couple of things right off the bat. When are you sitting in the upper deck? So how are you talking to these people in the upper deck? Number 2, I just want this whole thing to be over with. I'm done. I'm done. Let's have an actual team, whether it's the Twins, the Mets, the Giants, the Reds, the Dodgers, anybody, any of the 30, have an official statement that says Carlos Correa is on our team. Here's what I do like about this contract for Carlos Correa. It is very front-loaded as far as AAV is concerned. The reason being, $33.34 million up front versus $26.5 million from the Mets in terms of front-loaded of the contract. Another couple of things. He can guarantee $225 million after 6 years of performance. Year 7, he can get another $7.25 guaranteed after 502 plate clearances in year 6, which means he can guarantee $245 million with 7 years of performance. So it's not a bad deal. $245 million for 7 years, the first 7 years, and then who knows what happens after that. But I think you're right. I think, things didn't work out with the Giants. I don't know that he ever intended on going to the San Francisco Giants, but it didn't work out there. Didn't work out with the Mets, but I do like this for Correa. As far as the AAV is concerned, I like this for the Twins. It shows you they're trying to win. Ken Rosenthal saying this. His contract is for 6 years guaranteed at $200. He can guarantee a 7th year and another $25 million with 502 plate appearances in year 6. I just said that. Total value can increase to $245 million if he gets the 8th year. More details to come, again, pending physical. So basically, Kenny reiterating what I just said, as well as what the details are of this contract. But $33.34 million up front versus the Mets at $26.5 million. So front-loaded early on. Take the money early while you can get it. I like this for the Twins. Byron Buxton has already tweeted, "We're back." So they're excited to have him. Not necessarily the way that we thought all of this was going to go down. This is one of the most bizarre free agent stories that I can remember in any offseason, certainly any recent offseason. But I just want this, as I said, to be over with. Let's go. Sign him, make it official, go through that very awkward press conference, and let's get to spring training.
Bottom line is, Alana, he got $200 million guaranteed, and this is not his first choice. That's it. Nothing else to say. They can spin it any way they want. He did not want to go back to the Twins. He can't. He's not winning with Minnesota. They're not winning. I mean, I'm sorry. They'll be competitive, and maybe they make the playoffs occasionally, but they're not winning. This is not a championship-level team. Look at their starting rotation. I mean, I'm sorry. They're not winning a title. And with the Mets, he could. The Giants have won 3, so they have proven eventually that they can win. You're not winning with Minnesota, so they can spin it any way they want. Average salary,
you also didn't think that the Giants.
Winning.
You also didn't think the Giants were in a position to win right now either. Out of the 3 teams, the Mets are certainly the one that have the biggest chance of going to the postseason and winning a World Series championship. You didn't think it was going to be San Francisco, and you.
No, but the Giants within 12 years are going to win again because it's got a lot of money, and they know they're within the next decade, they're going to have a couple of chances to win a championship. I don't think Minnesota will. That is the reason why I think I wouldn't have I want to win. He's 28, 29 years of age. The idea is to win. Championship.
Well, he has already won. He has already won, and he does feel pretty highly about his skill set and what he can do. I think, like anybody, he has the right to test free agency. You can't fault a player for testing free agency. I just don't think the free agency, either this time or the last time he was a free agent, went that well. And now here we are, 3 teams down the line. He's going back to Minnesota, who obviously he didn't necessarily want to be there anyway if he had all of the opt-outs after the first year that he was there. So it didn't work out. Now you make the best of it. $225 million your first 6 years. You have an opportunity for $245 after year 7. That's not a horrible deal. It's not exactly what it was, but it's not horrible.
Yeah, but for $40 million, he put himself in Nowheresville. They're not winning. For $40 million extra, he put himself in Nowheresville. I would never do that. Never. We got lots to do. John Heyman is next. We'll continue on this in a second.